Welcome to the Run Testers. My name's Nick.
I'm Kieran.
In this video, we're going to be comparing the Garmin Fenix with the Garmin Enduro. First thing to do is probably clarify which Fenix we're talking about here, because there's a lot in them.
Which of the multitude of Fenix Eye? Fenixes?
Fenix. Well, I guess what we're mainly going to be comparing it to is the Pro versions of the Fenix, which have kind of music and maps on them, and really the 6 Pro and the 6X Pro, I guess.
Yeah, I think the 6 Pro was our pick essentially of the Fenixes that we would have recommended as the one to go and get out of that range, so it makes sense to compare that.
Yeah, exactly. It offers kind of the best balance of price and features and size and everything. When it comes to size, the Enduro is the same size as the 6X Pro, so it's a bit bigger than the Fenix 6 Pro. However, it is quite lightweight, basically, because they've part of that is this new nylon strap, but there's also, we've got the titanium version here. This is a titanium Fenix. Both quite light, but in general they've made the Enduro lighter. Yeah,
I mean, I don't think it's noticeably so that much on the wrist though, because it's quite, we'll get onto this later, but it's quite a hulking great watch, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you've used the Fenix steel version, so you don't think it's massively lighter than the steel version?
Not that I noticed the difference, but then I haven't had a problem with this in terms of wearing it 24/7. I wear it for sleep kind of quite happily. I know that's not been the case with you, because it is big on the wrist, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a big watch, but it's not a heavy watch, I think it's fair to say. It's obviously got the solar panels in it, which you do find on some models of the Fenix, but not kind of the classic Fenix 6. It's rather tasteful yellow line around here, so everyone knows you've got an Enduro. And the materials are much the same. You can get either a titanium or a steel Enduro. You can get a titanium or a steel Fenix, or a diamond-like carbon one, but basically steel is the cheapest you're going to find in any of them. The titanium is noticeably lighter, but you're paying at least another 100 quid usually for it.
And should we talk about the strap? Because that's one big difference, right? And the strap here, I think, is something we've both enjoyed.
Yeah.
You know, you've got this nylon strap. It has a different kind of adjusting setup where you kind of anchor the first side of the strap and then pull the other one tighter. But over an ultra distance, this is one of the tests I've done, it was much easier to get small adjustments on this strap to make it more comfortable than you do when you've got to choose between these kind of holes, these punched holes. Yeah,
I really like a nylon strap in general. This is a really good one in that when you get it wet, like in the shower, you can put it back on. It's not slimy and annoying. It dries really quickly. It hasn't stretched or kind of like degraded over time, and with like showering with it every day. Yeah, it's a really nicely done strap that I assume Garmin will bring to other watches soon. It would already fit the Fenix 6X Pro, but it doesn't fit the 6 currently. In terms of the sensors you're getting here, it's really all the same stuff. It's all everything basically that Garmin has to offer in terms of sensors. You know, barometric altimeters, GPS GLONASS, GPS Galileo, all that stuff. You know, it's got the same heart rate sensor, which is not the latest version now, which Garmin introduced interestingly on the Venue, but it's pulse ox, heart rate monitor. You know, best of the best stuff when it comes to Garmin sensors, it's fair to say.
Obviously, one of the big deciding factors is going to be how much it's going to cost you. So what are we talking about the difference in price here, Nick?
So the Fenix 6 Pro starts from $599.99, £600, let's say. I'm not going to do all the 99s, it gets annoying. So it starts from about £600 depending on the materials you use. The Enduro starts from $700 for the steel version, and the titanium version is $800. So it's a bit of a jump. And then if you're getting the Fenix 6X Pro, which is the same size as this but has the music and maps, that starts at £700. So it's a lot of money for any of these watches, but basically the key takeaway here is the Enduro is more expensive. You're paying for the battery life compared to the extra features you're getting on the Fenix.
So then I guess, we're diving into the features, looking at the Fenix versus the Enduro, essentially you're getting almost an identical watch here. There are a few differences. Key ones here being maps, interesting choice, not to have maps, topographical maps on the Enduro, and also there's no music, so no offline music for Spotify, those things.
Yeah, music makes a lot of sense. It's a big battery drain. The whole thing about this watch is it lasts forever. It's not necessarily aimed at people who'll be using it for music listening. Maps is more controversial. I guess it might take up some space on the watch where they could put battery. It still has some pretty impressive navigation features. You're going to get a breadcrumb trail with basically more advanced info than you get on most breadcrumb trails. You get Garmin's Climb Pro feature, which will analyse all the climbs in a route and give you information on the exact one you're on. It also now has descents. This was introduced with the Enduro, so instead of just telling you the climbs, it will tell you the descents, so you know how far downhill you're going.
So if you've plugged in a route you're following, say a race route, it'll tell you how much descent you've got left to do on that particular descent and how much climb, right?
Yeah, exactly, as well as like your overall like kind of elevation profile. So so climb 5, you've got another 100 meters of uphill, so don't go all out just yet, kind of thing. It's a really nifty feature. I really like Climb Pro. It's one of the best things about Garmin's routing in general, and the fact it's got it even without the maps is quite a big plus point. And you are still getting key navigation things like back to start and track back, so if you get lost you can get home. What you're not getting is basically the context of a topographical map. So
Yeah.
you won't see, look, here's a pond, I should turn right by the pond. It's all on the map on the Fenix. That isn't on the Enduro, it's just a line with a pointer.
Yeah, and I don't know, for me it doesn't, I do run a lot of ultras, but I tend to follow sort of strict courses. It doesn't really make a huge difference to me. I do know that most people who've looked at this watch immediately, who run kind of onto the trails, are thinking that's a crazy omission by Garmin.
I like maps. I don't think it's a deal breaker. I guess what really surprises me is not to have maps and then for the pricing to be as it is. So yeah, it's an interesting omission. The music makes a lot of sense not to have it on there. I don't use music. I think a lot of people don't necessarily use the music on these watches, and they really do drain the battery life. But the maps, when something is so clearly aimed at trail runners and stuff like that, I think it does make a bit of a difference.
And what's not clear really to us, I think, is whether or not it's a hardware issue or it's something that's deliberately been done to differentiate the Enduro from the Fenix, and it'd be interesting to know that. The other thing that's new, it came in with the Enduro, but will also trickle down to the Fenix, is a rest timer for ultra runners. So when you go into the aid stations, you can basically hit split and it will break out the time that you're spending scoffing and stuffing your face full of cheese and meats at the aid station buffet tables. What's interesting afterwards, what you get is your kind of, it's almost like your moving time versus your stationary time essentially, but it makes those numbers a little bit more useful so you can look at how your race strategy is panning out. I know that it definitely shows me that I hang around too much, enjoying sitting on a chair, but
no, that's good. I think it's really good. Yeah, it's now on the Fenix on this one. I think there's also Trail VO2 Max came in with the Enduro, which I'm not a huge fan of, the idea of that you get different VO2 Max trail running, but I just don't think it can be that exact because trails are so different depending on the season. The elevation obviously is taken into account, but yeah, I'm not too worried about Trail VO2 Max. I think VO2 Max on watch in general is pretty flawed anyway, but it's another new addition. But that, like I say, it's all trickled down to the Fenix anyway.
So you're not getting, so again, as a deciding factor, those things are not going to make a difference between these two watches.
Yeah.
Essentially, what you're coming down to on this watch really, right, is battery life, isn't it?
Yeah, it's basically, do you want maps or do you want battery life?
Maps versus battery life is the sacrifice you're going to make.
Yeah.
So Nick, what are we talking about headline stats for the Enduro?
So it lives up to its name in that you're getting a minimum of 70 hours GPS. That rises to 80 hours if you spend some time in the sun. There's a ultra max mode which goes up to 300 hours with sunlight, and generally you're expecting with sunlight to get up to 65 days of everyday use, which is loads of use. The Fenix 6 Pro is 36 hours of GPS. The 6X Pro does rise considerably to 60 hours, and yeah, it's still a long-lasting watch, it's fair to say, but it's 20 hours less with a bit of sun is a big difference. It's a third again.
Yeah, so it does make a big difference, and I think that's borne out in the tests that we've done. So one of the tests that I did, an ultra test, went and put it out for 8 hours to see how long the battery lasted, and it burned only 10% in full GPS mode. It's basically a multi-day capable ultra watch, right?
Yeah.
You can go out and do 5-day ultras on this and still have enough battery life over. Something like the Marathon des Sables, where you're going to be doing a multi-day adventure. The Enduro is capable of that. The Fenix 6, there might be a question mark about whether or not it will last you.
Yeah.
So that's the difference here.
So I think it's fair to say, yeah. So it does. If it does 36 hours, that'll probably tackle most people, most single ultra events.
Yeah.
Unless you're, crazy. But it's that multi-day you're really seeing the benefit.
Yeah.
And then actually, probably, it isn't necessarily what's aimed at, but where you really see the difference is in day-to-day uses. So how long did the Enduro last for you, including your ultra test?
So I got about 30 days out of this, which is crazy. And that's not, I wasn't running every day in that, but I think within that I'd had around kind of 30 hours of running in total, including that ultra run. And I was looking at the watch a lot. I was using it a lot because of, we were testing it at the time. I mean, if you're going to run an hour a day, you could basically charge this watch 12 times a year, which is an incredible difference compared to something like the Fenix, where you're probably still looking at charging it once every 7 to 10 days or something.
Probably that. Yeah, my road use of the Fenix was a watch I used for a long time. Normally I'd get kind of 7-8 days. When I activate a lot of the Power Manager features, so at night it turned off everything, I'd get more like 10 days. So basically for me, I am not an ultra, but I'm a marathon training, generally be running kind of 100k weeks, using the watch every day for some kind of activity. Phoenix is normally 7 to 10 days. The Enduro lasted me 23 days, a bit less. Just it's a very different style of usage. Again, once you actually fire up an activity, like those massive ones for you, it almost uses less battery than doing a little every day kind of thing, I think it's fair to say. So I got through 23 days, that's the longest the watch has ever lasted me doing that kind of training. I think it was about 300k, 20 hours or so on GPS, a bit more than that, a lot of indoor workouts as well. Yeah, it's like Kieran says, you actually really notice less almost so the individual activities and more the fact that, oh, I don't have to charge. I don't even know where the charger is at this stage. Yeah. Whereas the Fenix is like every week you're starting to get at a point where you start thinking about it. And actually the really thing that really told for me with the Enduro is I had a 25k marathon training run coming up and I had 2% of battery left, and I thought, oh, it's fine. I'm not even getting a low battery warning. I'm just going to go out and do it.
With the Enduro, you're basically waving goodbye to kind of battery anxiety, right? With the Fenix, I don't think you are.
No.
Although the Fenix obviously outperforms quite a lot of other watches. The Enduro, the luxury of just forgetting about charging was a surprise to me. I didn't really expect to feel that was such a big benefit, but it was huge. It was such a nice thing to not have to worry. And like you said, you could go out with 4%, 2%, and you'd still have enough to do a long run. The other thing that I noticed, I did a test between using the SPO2 monitor in all-day tracking mode on the Fenix and on the Enduro, and the difference is basically that with the Enduro you can almost have the SPO2 monitor on 24/7. I can't think of another watch where that just wouldn't kill the watch so much quicker than you really want it to. It's almost the first watch where you can have that on and not worry about it.
Yeah, definitely. It's usually the first feature I make sure is disabled on a watch because it halves battery life. But the Enduro, you can actually, if you are really keen, if you're doing those kind of multi-day adventures in the mountains, you can have it on the whole time, really see your blood oxygen levels rather than just taking spot checks.
And just one other note, on the solar charging with the Enduro, one test that I did, I put it out in the back garden on a pretty grey day in London. I think I put it out for about 8 hours and it added about 1% battery life.
Which of this watch is a lot.
Which again is like, that's going to last you a few days of running. So I think that's, it's interesting in a bright day of sunlight. Again, you take this to the desert to do the MDS, or you go on a very sunny multi-day ultra. This is going to still be there at the end of it, fine.
Yeah, well, which I had noticed, because I have tested out the Fenix 6 Pro solar, and really I found that at most you're getting an extra day, if that, out of the solar panels on that. These seem to really be working overtime to add to this battery life. In terms of the actual running experience, obviously a lot of it is the battery chat we've already done, but it's fair to say the differences between the watches are things that don't crop up very often. Like, they're really very similar experiences on the run, it's fair to say. For me, they have exactly the same kind of Garmin GPS performance, which is a little bit generous on loops. It always seems to give me slightly more distance than I've actually run, even on a loop I've measured near me. The heart rate is okay, but you're going to need a chest strap if you want accurate performance, it's fair to say.
Oh man, optical heart rate, if you really want to benefit from all the training features, at least have confidence in that you're firing in the most accurate data into that chest strap. And if you're going to pay 700 quid, 800 quid, the extra, 50 to 100 pound for the watch, you're going to have to probably go all in.
Yeah, I definitely will be getting a chest strap, it's fair to say. And then in terms of differences, so like maybe once a month I like to map out a course and use it. It's very rare that I do that, and actually it wouldn't be fine just to have breadcrumb trails. But I guess if you are someone who lives in the Alps and you're constantly exploring new terrifying areres, then maybe you really want the security of those maps, but it's not a difference that crops up day to day, it's fair to say.
No, I didn't really notice the lack of them.
And I will say that I've used music on the Fenix. It's not something I tend to do in practice. Like, I don't, it's still a slight faff to get music, and you can do it kind of wirelessly with Spotify, but I don't really listen to music off my watch, so it's not something that really came up for me either. And I think the audience for these watches, is it something that's going to be a problem?
I don't know, yeah, I mean, I just, for me, it's just a weird one, because the watch that has the biggest battery life, give me the option.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Basically, to use that battery life as I wish. I don't see. Maybe they drain more power having the maps and the music, but I just don't see why on the thing that's got the most battery life that you wouldn't give me the option to have it. It just seems a bit of a weird one. But
yeah, it must just be something about storage space within the watch casing, I guess, perhaps. But then we're not sure on that front, are we? The other really thing that was noticeable for me was the size. I have quite frail wrists. I'm quite frail.
Very
around.
dainty.
Yeah, I'm a dainty chap, and I think the Fenix 6 Pro is as big as I'm prepared to go on a watch. The Enduro, despite being lightweight and not feeling like heavy on the wrist, is just slightly too big. I didn't like sleeping in it. I took it off to sleep. On my tight hoodies, which are tight to my skinny little arms, it was hard to get the wrist over it at times, the sleeve over it at times. So yeah, I think it's probably slightly too big for me. And it's just, it'd be interesting to see if there's any kind of way they can get big batteries into smaller watches in the future.
Yeah, and I think it goes without saying that not everyone wants this hulking great chunk of watch on a wrist. I just think actually constantly what happens is we get these things come out in these huge sizes.
Yeah.
There has to be a time soon when people start to think a little bit more democratically about that. But
yeah, I mean, the one time Garmin did do that recently was the 745, and the battery life was really halved, and it just there must be a way to get a bit more in there, but we'll see. But overall, it's probably fair to say the running experience isn't very different between these watches, except the fact you're charging this one once a month and this one once every twice every 3 weeks, or 3 times every 3 weeks kind of thing. Yeah, a lot more often basically.
Yeah.
I suppose the easiest way to kind of deliver a verdict on the watch is to say, Kieran, if you had your druthers, which watch would you rather have?
I didn't think I would be bothered by the Enduro. I looked at the price and I looked at the battery life. I didn't think it was going to be that attractive to me. Having used it, for me, it's like a luxury that is very hard to go back on.
Yeah.
I sort of, in the review that I did, I likened it to turning left on the plane, if you've ever had that experience, where once you've experienced it, business class or upper class, going back to economy it's a hard thing to do. That's how I feel about this watch. Is that it's just such a treat not having to worry about charging it.
Yeah.
I don't care that much about music and maps. My take on it basically is this, Nick: if someone else is going to buy this for me, or you have enough money for that price tag not to really be bothersome, buy this watch.
Yeah.
If you're not bothered by paying a high price on it, your bank balance can cope.
Yeah.
Get it, you won't regret it. The convenience of not ever charging it is just wonderful.
Okay, fair enough. Now, I agree with a lot of that. I think it's very hard to go back from such good battery life, especially as a guy who normally uses the Apple Watch, which does not have 80 hours of GPS. You'll be shocked to learn. However, I think for me, I would be buying the Fenix, definitely. A lot of that is the fact that I don't use the maps that much, but if I'm going to pay less and get a feature, I will use probably more than the battery life. In terms of, I'll never do like a multi-event probably anytime soon. But really, it's also a lot to do with size. I think it is too big for me, and as much as I enjoy not charging it, a little bit small. It's not like this is a small watch. It does make quite a big difference for me on the run. But yeah, really, I did want a stripped back Fenix without music and maps, or even really what I want is a Fenix without music but with maps and a better battery life, and I want it to cost less than the Fenix. And this is some of those things, but the price is a big turn off, considering that it is getting slightly fewer features.
And here's the thing, right? There may be a spanner in the works, because at some point in the not too distant future, we're going to make a bet here that some of this, clever battery life, this amazing battery life, is going to wind up in another Garmin watch lower down the food chain, right?
Yeah, I feel like, obviously there's less, they've removed a couple of features, and that's probably saving some space that's gone purely on battery life in here, but I still don't think it accounts for the massive difference compared to the 6X Pro in terms of 20 hours, some of that solar panels. But I feel like maybe the Garmin Fenix 7, the 4 and the 955, assuming those all come out, will have slightly better battery life, and it might then be, you won't really have to make a choice between these watches. You'll get very good battery life with music and maps. We don't know that. None of that is based on anything like inside knowledge. No inside scoops here, I'm afraid. Yeah. But it just seems the logical way.
It's based on Nick's gut feeling. And the thing is, if you've gone out and spent 700, 800 quid on one of these, and that happens, and you can get most of what you need for a couple hundred quid cheaper, you're going to be a little bit miffed.
Yeah, so I'll be interested to see if that happens. Like I say, it's interesting because actually the differences of music and maps and battery life, this has still got a good battery life, and this still does has good route navigation, but it's really what you really prioritise, and then if it's extra 100 quid, it's probably what kind of the minimum you're paying for the Enduro.
So there you have it. That's our head-to-head between the Garmin Fenix and the Garmin Enduro. We hope you've enjoyed it. If you have any questions on either of those devices, we'll be very happy to try and answer them in the comments below. We hope you found it useful. We hope we might save you a few quid if you make the right decision.
Well, save you a few worries. We do actually have a much more detailed review of the Enduro if you'd like a lot more stuff about the tech specs elsewhere on the channel. We've obviously moved through those quite quickly because this is more about comparison.
Yeah. So don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos like this. It's been a pleasure speaking to you, and we'll see you again on the Run Testers.